Tom Bartholomew is back with me on Weekend Connection. Tom is with the Better Business Bureau, and today, as always, we're talking about scams, and more scams. You'll get an update, so stick around. Let's get connected with Tom Bartholomew on Weekend Connection. Good afternoon, my friend. Welcome to Weekend Connection on the Bible Broadcasting Network. I have as my guest once again Tom Bartholomew from the Better Business Bureau, and I've had Tom on Weekend Connection before, but always good to bring you back, Tom, to go over things, and especially the latest internet scams that are out there, and they seem to pop up every single day, don't they?
Oh, they really do. It's amazing what's happened during the pandemic. And in fact, we've been able to record 107 separate scams that have evolved just out of the pandemic. Scammers, it's just been a veritable field day for them.
And so since what date these 107 scams?
We identified the first ones actually in March, first week of March of 2020.
Wow.
So even before some of the mandates and restrictions came out, that scammers were taking advantage of folks.
Well, let's go over several scams while we have some time here on Weekend Connection. Let's start off with the first one.
Sure. Yeah, it's what we've seen primarily, what scammers have been doing is what we call an imposter scam, that they're posing as somebody else. So take what is in the headlines, and especially during the pandemic, what was in the headlines? Well, first it was a shortage of masks and hand sanitizers. And so phony websites were immediately propped up, most of them out of China, making it look like they were a real company, making it look like it was a brand that you were even familiar with. It takes very little to set up that type of website, but people were so frantic, if you remember, so frantic back then, to get masks, to get hand sanitizers so we could protect ourselves. And that just started the whole process off of sometimes we would get emails or even texts. That was probably one of the even more concerning, is that people were getting texts saying it was from the Internal Revenue Service about your stimulus check, or it was from the Centers for Disease Control about testing facilities, and then about vaccine rollouts. And so as we dug more into this and saw exactly what they were doing, especially with the information that they had, it turns out that some of the data breaches and hacks that occurred 4 or 5 years ago, that they've just been sitting on that data, waiting for the right opportunity to take advantage of folks. And so if there was a data breach where they got your name and address and phone number and email, which happened in quite a few of those breaches a few years ago, they were able then with the pandemic to use that data to send emails, to send texts, to pose as government agencies and try to rip us off.
Boy, it seems virtually impossible to keep safe anymore on the internet. It just seems like every single day one or more things pop up in the news about data breaches and things like that.
It's true. And there's, to be honest, there's not too much you or I can do if our data is hacked from a, Yahoo or Equifax type of situation. But that data only accounts for about 5% of identity theft. Where it comes from more is when we willingly provide information on the internet to a company that, again, where we think we're buying a legitimate product from a legitimate company. And if you read their terms and conditions, even if it's a legitimate company, they will tell you in the terms and conditions that by clicking here, you're agreeing that we're going to be able to take all of the personal information on you and sell it to whoever we want to. And, so people ask us, well, how did they get my phone number? How did they get this data? You gave it to them. But again, who reads those terms and conditions?
Well, exactly. I don't know anyone in my circles who reads those line by line. I mean, and they probably put that well at the bottom before you say, okay, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the business, and the majority of the time I don't read them, but then it comes down to what you know about that business before you do business with them.
Yeah.
And especially on online purchases, internet purchases, that if you're chasing that deal, if you're saying, I want the best deal, just put it in Google, best deal on TVs. Well, you're going to get a little over 1 million results from that type of search. And you just go down this rabbit hole, like this spiral of trying to chase that best deal. And when you finally find it, you say, my goodness, this is exactly the TV I was looking for, and what an amazing price. And you go to check out and buy that item, you don't even know what company you're dealing with. You don't even think to look at the web address to see what that company is. Because if you take just those 2 minutes and plug that web address or the company name into bbb.org, you're going to find out everything you need to know about that company, of whether there's somebody you can trust. And so if there's somebody you can trust, you probably don't need to read those terms and conditions. Or if it's somebody that you're going, whoa, this site was created out of China just last week. Do I really want to be giving them my credit card information?
Well, Tom, now that things are opening up around most of the country, COVID-related restrictions being eased and what have you, let's talk for a few minutes about airfare scams, because people are booking tickets and people are ready to get up and go and travel. And let's cover that ground for a few minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting how scammers work in this arena. So again, say you're looking for the best airfare. I want to go to California. I want the best airfare to California. So you just plug that in, and immediately will come up some search results. If you click on just one, or the first one, or the second one, or the third one, that's advertising space that company or that organization has purchased. So you're not going to be dealing with American Airlines. You're not going to be dealing with United Airlines. You're going to be dealing with a third party that claims that they've got this best airfare available to you. And when you click on it, you go, wow, that's, I can fly round trip to California for $250. Yeah, sign me up. And once you start that buying process of providing them again with that your personal identifying information, name, address, phone number, email address, but then most importantly, your credit card information, that's exactly what they're after. They have bought that advertising space in first position on Google or whatever search engine you're on, and there's no real company behind it. Now, once these are reported to Google, they take those down. But in the meantime, in that time in between it's reported and it's taken down, other people are getting ripped off. So you really have to be cautious when you're buying airfare. We've seen the same thing now with rental cars. We've seen it with now that there are sporting events and concerts that are starting to kick back up, that we're seeing it with that as well. That those first few positions, you really need to scroll past those. Look for the official site of who you want to be doing business with, and don't get roped into dealing with somebody where you think you're finding the best deal and you just end up being a victim of identity theft.
Wow. They are clever folks, these scammers, aren't they?
They really are. They've perfected their craft, and they use technology to the fullest. And with as tied as we are individually to our technology now, we just have to become much more savvy consumers of what tactics they're using and how we can protect ourselves.
So where do these scammers reside mostly around the world? What has your research shown?
Most of them are from India, South America, and Eastern Europe. It used to be a lot of them were in Western Africa, not so much anymore. But yeah, India, Eastern Europe, and South America, primarily Brazil, are where they're housed. So that makes it very difficult for enforcement authorities in the United States to try to put a stop to these guys. Even with robocalls, one of the most complained about things in the last few years is, how do I get these robocalls to stop? And most of them are coming from India, and the government knows who they are, what they're doing, and there is a way to stop it, and there's legislation that's in the works to get it stopped. But it's like well, just do it. Just
Well,
because
that's my question. Is that I thought legislation has been passed, but yet I still keep getting calls from potential spam and
yeah,
numbers I don't know.
yeah, and it's because the major carriers in the United States, AT&T, Verizon, so forth, are pushing back on that legislation of when it can be implemented. It's supposed to be implemented originally this September, but they're pushing back, saying no. We're not ready to do that, because basically they're going to have to be the police of screening out those calls that are coming to them through these foreign carriers, and that's not it's not the right answer. If they have the technology and the capability to screen those calls out, do it. Hopefully, the FCC won't back down from the implementation date, because even if our carrier, I use AT&T, even if my carrier identifies something as spam, they don't catch every single one of them as spam. And I'm sorry, I don't need any more extended warranties on my car. Yeah.
And it
I
seems
don't need to buy I
and
don't need to buy protection for my credit card.
yeah,
Just
really.
stop it.
And I have an app, for example, on my phone, that's supposed to weed out all or most of the spam, but the spammers seem to get around all this stuff.
And a lot of it is spoofing, caller ID spoofing. That's been one of the biggest things we've seen in the last year or so. That they can make caller ID say whatever they want it to say. I can make my caller ID say whatever I want it to say. I mean, it's just that easy. It's not that tricky. It's not that technologically advanced. But if you get a phone call and it says it's from the Internal Revenue Service or it's from Social Security Administration, you're more apt to pick that up than if it says it was spam. And so by using those types of tricks, it costs them more to do that. But if they know that it's not going to get blocked, if they know there's a chance it's going to get picked up, it's worth it to them.
Let's talk about this, changing the subject just a little bit, but not really. Gift cards. Now, you would think that something as innocuous as gift cards couldn't be, scammed or anything like that, because there's gift cards and you have a certain amount of money placed on those gift cards. What's the deal with those?
Yeah, it comes in a couple of different forms. When you're buying somebody a gift card, if you're buying it online through a site, again, you have to be very careful of who you're doing business with, because you'll be getting a card, and if you're going to give it to someone as a gift, it's not a really great gift if they go to use it and there's no money on it. Even though it was promised that there was $50 or whatever. But more importantly, when you're in the store and you see this whole rack of gift cards, look at how they're being sold. Is the PIN number and verification code on the back of the card, has that been tampered with? If it's affixed to a piece of cardboard, that's great. That means they can't mess with that. And the even better ones is you buy it and then it can't be used without an activation code that they give you at checkout. So there are still some that don't use that kind of packaging, that don't take those types of extra steps to protect us. And so I just don't buy those. If it's not something that I can tell cannot be tampered with, there's enough other ones out there to use. You don't need to have something that's been tampered with that becomes, even if you're buying it for yourself, what a lousy feeling that is, that I thought, well, okay, I'll just get this prepaid debit card or I'll get this gift card, and then find out that it's basically worthless.
So basically, if they're wrapped around cardboard or plastic or something like that, you're pretty safe?
Yeah, those are, if it's in a tamper-proof, but if it's just a card that's hanging on a rack that it has nothing to protect the backside of that, there's a very good chance that's been tampered with.
Lots of information here over the past 15 minutes on Weekend Connection. And Tom, I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to go over several of these spams. And I know that scams, rather, spams and scams.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm sure I will have you back over the next few months to talk about even more brand new scams that are coming out even as we speak.
They're They're always brewing. They're always coming up with these very creative folks, and
They
they've
are.
been very successful.
They
and so
are.
they're not going to give up.
No, they're
not
not.
going to give up.
Well, Tom, some information, phone number, email address, any information you can give our listeners if they would like more information from you and the Better Business Bureau.
The best place is our website, bbb.org. It's got all of the information we talked about, tips on how to protect yourself, plus the other 106 scams we didn't get to that have popped up during this pandemic.
So you've actually got them listed out one by one, all these scams.
Yeah, if you go into the part of our website called BBB Scam Tracker, they're all there.
All right, Tom Bartholomew, thank you very much for joining me and joining our BBN listeners again on Weekend Connection. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
Go ahead and take a look at that website. It's chock full of information. bbb.org. bbb.org, the Better Business Bureau website. Weekend Connection is a public affairs program of the Bible Broadcasting Network. It's heard Saturdays, 4:02 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.